Electric Avenue. And then we'll take it higher. Oh, we gonna rock down to Electric Avenue. And then we'll take it higher.
Grimerica. Yeah, when it comes down to creation, the big mysteries still exist, and it's good to be able to say this is a real mystery and not one that comes out of the fact that we've got the wrong model in the first place.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Wal Thornhill a little bit later about the electric universe theory. Seems like it's been a long time coming. And we've got our upgrade winner, Nickie Benefield. He's going to join us from his new iPad, and we'll talk to him. Get into all sorts of fun stuff. But first, as always, Graham Dark Side Dunlop, buddy. How's it going?
Good. I'm really good. This was a great episode with Wal, and it's super fun to have Nickie here. Do you want to talk to people about how Nickie arrived on our podcast?
How he arrived?
Yeah,
he won the whole motherfucking thing.
Yeah. So we had this fundraiser for a new recording computer because ours was really old and it was about to crash, and a bunch of people donated. We really want to thank them, and Nickie was the winner. So he won like an iPad, a bunch of swag, and then to pick a guest and come on the show with us, which was an amazing choice because it's somebody we've had on our list for so long. And it finally, I think it lit a fire under our ass to get Wal Thornhill from Electric Universe on the show. And it's coming up, and it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah. And Nickie's been around since the first days. I think, well, you were around in the first year for sure. So it's good to see a long time listener take it home.
I think really I only had to go back like 3 episodes when I found you, to catch up, how you do with a podcast. You find it and then you go, well, let me see what they've been doing, So I think Dennis McKenna was one of the first ones I listened to. I can't remember when that was, but he was one of the first ones. And then I went back and caught the other ones, and I've been running ever since. Enjoyed, always enjoy your shows.
We're only getting like 40 downloads an episode back then, so you're one of like 40 people that's been around that long, so it's good to see you take it home. And you're on the iPad now.
Yes, sir, I am. It's nice, too. And learning it little by little. I got a 9-year-old granddaughter. She got one through school this year. They have an exchange student. So Sophie, my granddaughter, they got her the iPad, and she uses it to translate English, Spanish back and forth, so she can communicate with the girl in her class. And so, every time she comes over, she shows me something, tips and tricks on this that I can do. So, maybe I'll be up to speed one of these days.
Just don't accidentally do the sex tapes thing like in the movie.
The movie, yeah.
Accidentally clouds. Actually, that might be. Hopefully, it's not still on Graham's cloud. Who knows what might pop up on that thing?
Oh man, well,
Yeah, be careful. There's some audio books that we gave you there that are pretty.
I noticed some of them are 18 plus. So but I appreciate that. That's part of a well-rounded life.
That's good.
We had to assume
been with my wife for 30 years, so. Yeah, we do some reading,
We had to assume whoever won would be 18 and over, because you have to be 18 or over to listen to the show.
There you go.
Or is it still 18 nowadays? Maybe nowadays it's only like
14
before you can listen to cussing.
Do y'all get explicit rating every time? Do you even pay any attention to that? I don't notice.
Yeah, we do. We have a explicit rating on iTunes.
Okay. Yeah.
Mostly because of Graham's potty mouth.
So,
what do you got?
Well, Nickie was just talking about his ketosis. He's, because I've been playing around with ketosis too. And I was on Adam's podcast the other day talking about it as well with one of our new bloggers, Andrew Lemessany. So we're coming out on Adam's podcast probably in a week or two or something. That's a Friends to Know podcast. I should probably put that in the show notes. But yeah, and just while we're talking about that, Andrew's been blogging for us for a few blogs now. They're great. So check out the blogs too.
Yeah.
And Nickie was talking about his trying to get on that ketosis diet a little bit. That's going pretty good.
Yeah, there's some temptations, every now and then, but years ago I did the Atkins, but I mean I was a younger man then. I could just cut out sodas and bread and drop 15 pounds. That was basically it. But now I'm over 50 now. I'm 57. So for the last 8-10 years, I didn't think anything would work anymore. But I finally kind of learned. As a weightlifter, I was making sure I always kept plenty of protein in my body. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But as I dropped the carbs, I also started to drop the protein a little bit. And now I've started to drop the weight a little bit too. So, yeah, it's an individual thing. It's not everybody wants to tell you on the internet that they've got the weird trick or tip but you send them $99.95 and they send you the same thing everybody else will send you. So.
What do you replace the protein with?
Fat. That's the
healthy fat.
That's the deal. Yeah, healthy fat.
Bacon?
So
Bacon's in there.
I've actually went to pork belly, which is basically an unseasoned bacon, a raw. It's a green. It's not been smoked or cured or anything. It's just fresh. I got a local butcher, and they cut local meat, and so the pork belly it's the same cut as bacon, but they just don't. It's not been cured. So I salt and pepper it to taste. Or what's that?
Do you cook it?
Yeah, fry it in a pan just like you would bacon. A cast iron skillet. You can, people use it in greens or beans or crock pot thing. Throw a big chunk in there, and comes out just a big juicy chunk of fat.
Yeah, I think I had that actually at a fancy restaurant one time, and I wasn't expecting it. It was like fried wild boar pork belly or something. I was like, oh fuck yeah. And I got it. It was just like all fat. I was like so disappointed. I mean, I like fat. I'm a fat eater. Like I collect the fat from my family. Actually, Madison is starting to like it too, but like I'd scrape all the fat on my plate and I will chew that shit down.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, the tails of a ribeye. I've seen, and my wife's handed them to me many times and give me the strangest look when I wolf it down. That's the best part.
It's like the chicken.
Just a little bit of there you go, skin of a chicken. Yeah, again, that's the only fat you're gonna find.
They're saying that the food industry's biggest blunder over the last few decades was that whole thing, right? Where fat was so bad, like demonizing healthy fats over freaking refined sugar, And now we're finding out in 2010, 2016 that
getting all huscular
sugar's like completely poisonous, and it's all poison, and then healthy fats are actually good.
Yeah, I cannot process sugar at all anymore. I mean, my body just, won't do it.
It's hard
as much as I love it. Yeah.
It's hard because I crave the sugar and the carbs. Like it's.
Oh yeah, at times, yeah. That's what I said. That the times I've been out of ketosis, probably in the last month or two, is there's ice cream around or something. Who's going to turn that down?
Graham can never throw away a cookie.
I did today. Yeah.
No, you didn't. I
didn't throw it away, but I didn't eat it.
You ate the little crumb I put on your desk.
So
that's the biggest thing at work. The donuts come out and stuff, and other people they'll say, "Well, I'm diabetic," and I said, "Yeah, but I'm trying to control it without medication." They'll take another shot and eat a donut.
Yeah, it's just I gotta say no. I gotta say no when there's that stuff around.
It happened just this morning. Was that this morning? Yesterday morning.
It was this morning. Yeah.
We had a cookie, and Graham told me I had to take it because he couldn't throw it away. So I broke off a little crumb and put it on his desk. And then when nobody was looking, he snuck and ate it.
You don't waste food either. That's the way I was raised. So you can't just chunk it. Yeah. Give it away is a good thing.
Speaking about ketones, I had this little dream the other night, and I was
synchro?
Well, it turned into one. Well, I think it did. Well, you're not going to like it, but.
I'm a rambling gram with synchronicities all over the web. And Aaron is skeptical about everyone and don't believe it yet.
I do want to say to Ulysses that, yes, I am harsher on Graham. And if you don't watch it, I'll be harsher on you, too.
I think, yeah, you're pretty much harsher on everybody. But this is one of those synchronicities that's just more intense as it happens. So anyways, I had this dream that I was testing for ketones. And I'm not on a real strict ketosis diet or anything like that. But I had this dream that I was testing for it through this almost like a breathalyzer. And I don't know how you test for ketones, but I was blowing this breathalyzer and I was a 5. And I don't know, I was asking them, what am I supposed to be? And they're saying
like a breathalyzer?
It's like you blow in it to test your ketones. And then in the dream, I was watching a video from the 80s and the 90s where people were doing it and they were 9 and 8 and they were comparing people that were eating this weird diet, right? In the 80s and 90s. And then we get back to the current time where I'm blowing a 5 and they're saying we're supposed to be 2 or 3, but that day I had a bunch of sweets.
Oh,
and
so
I was like, you know what? Actually, it's not bad. I had 5, but I had all this shit today. So it's okay. And then I'm texting Mike. I'm asking Mike.
RH negative Mike.
Yep. Oh, Sasquatch fell off the mic. RH negative Mike, my longevity
coach.
My longevity coach. Yeah. I'm looking for collagen. Anyways, he just says he just found a company that is going to sell exogenous ketones in Canada. But he's saying, looks like it'll be network marketing though. Anyways, I said, well, there you go. There's your new job and all that. And I just finished this bowl of macaroni. And I said to him, funny, I just had a dream. I was blowing into a device to measure ketones. I said, I blew 5. And he says, you can eat a bowl of macaroni and 15 minutes later be in ketosis. And I just finished a bowl of macaroni. I said, I just had a bowl of macaroni, and he's, synchronicities abound, and we have another texting synchro.
Love and light.
Yeah. He's like, seriously, you dreamed of ketones? I'm like, yep.
I thought you actually did the ketone thing.
No.
That was all a dream.
It was all a dream.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
So anyways, that's that. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but since Nickie brought up the ketosis diet, I figured I might as well. It was pretty weird.
Where do we get the ketone blower? The ketone blower?
I don't know if that's even a thing. It was just I dreamt it up.
The cheapest way to check it is actually a urine strip. So
what?
you don't want to blow into them. You just pee on them. 15 seconds later, it'll tell you how deep in ketosis you are.
Really?
Yeah, there's colors on the back of us. What else is? Well, there's something else I've seen that you've pee on it before. I think blood sugar actually you can test that way. Blood's a lot better, but there's a couple of different kind of strips you can pee on, and it can change colors and show you what's going on.
It's like a ketosis pregnancy test.
Yeah,
and sure. You want it to be in more ketosis, the better. That's when you're in your fucking primal stage.
Yeah. The sticks I've got, the darker purple they are, the deeper in ketosis you are. But as far as your breath goes, your friends will know that, because if you're in deep ketosis, you got pretty bad breath, usually, because you're burning your own fat. And I think that's, even back, in the 70s when Atkins diet was so popular and all the rage and stuff, people would go on it for a few days and the breath would get bad. That would be one of the side effects of it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You might want to keep a mint in your pocket.
So
sugar-free, of course.
So there's also other theories that it's not necessarily a good thing for everybody, right? And it's not always good to be in ketosis, but it is a way to live. Like they're finding out that carbs aren't as important as they thought they were, right?
Yeah, there's no essential carb. Yeah, that's basic, basic fact. You can, I mean, now you're going to get headachy and stuff like that, and I will. And I try to get a few carbs from vegetables, like right now I can see avocados, hemp milk, the pork belly I was talking about, and some Brussels sprouts. So that's basically what I've been grazing on tonight. So.
And what has, I could fucking hammer down on some Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, they're a good side to me. I love them, contrary to what the bushes may say.
Have you ever thought about getting your blood work done and sent to those labs that sort of tell what kind of, how your exercise works for you and what kind of, how you process some of the foods and supplements and all that?
Yeah, I'd love to, doctors, the standard, my healthcare physician or whatever is the only one I've really had blood work done through. And, because of insurance regulations, they won't do anything but the standard tests and stuff. And it's just like my testosterone at one time. See, I'm more of my endocrine system's just slow. I got low thyroid, low insulin production, low testosterone, which really surprising because I was lifting weights at the time and lifting really heavy and 3-4 times a week, but yeah. And that's another thing ketosis can do to you. And I've noticed it. I've not had my blood checked, but just from my body and my reaction, your testosterone goes up. If you stay ketogenic around, you don't have to be totally strict, but maybe a carb meal once, twice a week,
Do you take branched chain amino acids or anything like that? Or
I do on days I work out. Like my workouts now more like a couple times a week of weightlifting. I do a lot of walking. Bernheim Forest is close by. It's lots of nice hiking trails. If you can avoid the ticks this time of year, it's really I like a walk. Like I've heard y'all talk about walking meditations, and I use a little music or listen to a podcast and stuff and get out in the woods for a while. And
you ever do it?
I usually take branched chains. Can't hardly take yet. I have went minimal. My shoe has a lot less. I used to wear the old sturdy hiking shoe, but I went and looked at the 5-toe foot shoe,
Yeah, I got those
said,
guys.
Do you? Yeah. I was not going to spend that amount of time to put one of them on. I sat there.
It's okay that you don't have a grandma.
You keep getting the toe in the wrong hole. It's pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Toe in the wrong hole. Yeah, I know.
That's always dangerous.
And a couple of my toes have been broken before, and they're kind of numb, so they feel weird in the shoe.
Crooked.
Yeah.
I went out. I had just a minimal shoe, and I stubbed a toe about 2 months ago, and so I actually went out and bought it's still a kind of a flat sole, but more of a toe cap over it. So don't need to hurt that toe anymore. Let it heal up.
Yeah.
Are they hard to fit over your web toes?
So
why is your one toe all weird looking there?
Because I heard it in hockey there. Yeah, it's been damaged again.
When you shaved your legs, damaged. We're calling it damaged.
So Nickie, there's these shoes I heard about that are like earthing shoes. Like they're like hiking shoes, but they've got a thin sole and copper wires through them or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard this. You'd like this guy's podcast called Ben Greenfield Fitness. He's like up on the latest.
Okay. I know his name. I think I've read some of his writings, some of his articles and stuff, but I've never listened to that podcast.
Yeah.
No.
Oh man, like he is full of amazing science and information. He's not closed-minded at all. Like he'll talk about sound and how it's healing, and like restructuring water through pouring it over crystals and sunlight, like the science behind all that stuff as well, and not just be dogmatic over, like pharmaceutical type science. But he talks about supplements all the time and meditation and all kinds of stuff. Like it's really, really cool.
Yeah, well, that's me. About the only thing I'm anti now is pharmaceuticals. I've had such a bad, I went through the standard thing when I first found out that I was insulin resistant. They actually diagnosed it as type 2 diabetes, but once we got a little deeper into it, it was just I wasn't producing enough insulin to take care of the blood sugar. But yeah, I went down the route of metformin, and which a lot of people say metformin's a good drug. It's been around since the 20s, and stuff, and actually Life Extension recommends everybody that can get it take 1,000 milligrams a day. But after about 3 months of taking it, it did stabilize my blood sugar, but also couldn't get over 5 or 6 miles away from my toilet, because when I had to go, so I had to figure out something else.
And that's going better for you now?
Yeah, I no pharmaceuticals at all. I take supplements, I've tried, fish oil is a big one.
Yeah.
Stay with it. And like you said, the branch chains, ATP is also, it just feeds your muscles. And when you're working out or running, walking, whatever, it's kind of it's almost like energy. And I use B12 sublingual, drop it under your tongue. That's a big burst of energy. So there's pharmaceuticals is a last resort to me. And you were talking about the ones that should be ketogenic. Anybody that's had cancer or has cancer, more and more now, there is doctors that some tumors don't respond, but a lot of tumors do, and so you can basically starve them to death because they feed on glucose. So if you're eating sugar, all you're doing is speeding your cancer up. So
yeah, also chronic pain and stuff like that as well, probably, right? I mean, it's also you're also sort of getting rid of a lot of other things like gluten, probably, and other problem items.
Yeah, the gluten thing. I used to take Claritin, allergy medicines all the time. You just thought it was like here, the Ohio Valley where I live. Everybody says, it's just the Ohio Valley. It's allergy country, But stay away from gluten. I had a gluten exposure about 2 weeks ago. 2 days later, my eyes are running, nose running, that kind of stuff. And it took me about a week to get over it, So
I take allergy pills every day.
Well, it's an easy experiment. 30 days. That's a good thing. Like, I don't know if y'all have heard of Rob Wolf. He wrote a book about the paleo diet. But that's what he'll tell you. 30 days. Take 30 days. See if it changes. If it don't, then well, that's probably not going. It's not the right road to go down. So
as far as like, are you talking about ketosis or just gluten free?
Just trying to get off of gluten would be another big one. That's a lot of that. That's the allergy portion of it for me was getting away from grains. I hardly ever eat. If I eat any bread anymore, it's like Ezekiel bread, sprouted bread.
I wonder if that's my problem.
Yeah, maybe you should try that.
Because then, if that's what your symptoms are, I mean, it's probably fucking up all sorts of other shit along the way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I've got my daughter and her son are both sneeze all the time, and your family sometimes the hardest one to talk to. So, but I've asked them that would they like to try it, and she works in a restaurant, and she said, "Well, that's probably the last thing I could do is get away from bread." And I said, "Well, yeah, but try it for 30 days, see what happens." But,
I wonder if it has to be away from bread completely, or if you can do. I watched a special the other day on how if you can get back to the real original, like sourdough 3-ingredient breads.
Yeah,
you could. A lot of people, even with gluten problems, are able to eat those with no problems.
Yeah, see the sprouted breads, Ezekiel bread is a brand name. It takes its name from a verse in Ezekiel in the Bible where they talk about eating the grain. But yeah, they sprout the grain, and that opens the husk, and that's where your gluten's at. So basically, you're getting the seed out of the middle of the wheat without getting that whole part, And supposedly that's supposed to be better for you, but I just don't eat a whole lot of any of that because I really, after a while, I don't miss it. But you do miss it at times. If you go into a restaurant and they bring out that hot bread,
It's crazy that we want something that's so bad for us. Like, why? Yeah. Why did we evolve to crave the stuff that really might be bad for your health?
Well, it's just like fruit. When we were hunter-gatherers or whatever, we gathered that as 2 weeks out of the year when it was ripe. And so we gorged on it. But then all winter long, we put up and preserved the meat we killed and stuff like that. And that's what we ate all winter. And you only had the fruit when it was in season. Now we can eat it 365. So
is that part of what the paleo is as well as seasonal eating?
Yes, it can be. They eat some fruits. Citrus fruits, I think, is one they don't like that much. But like seasonal apples, like green. My son, he goes by just if it's green, eat it, is what he says. Like if it's white, don't eat it. That's a couple of oversimplified really, but like I said, you have to figure it out how your body responds to it, because you won't respond the same way I do because we got different factors going on.
Well, it never occurred to me of cutting out fruit and things like that.
Yeah, because fruit has a lot of sugars, right? It really is very sugar.
Yeah, and it's fructose, which is it has to make an extra trip through your liver, and that kind of a little harder on your system. But like berries, there are certain fruits that they're paleo approved, berries is one of them. And then like Granny Smith apples, green skinned apples is another one that they say, in moderation. Some people eat bananas. Some people say bananas are the devil's work. So, you can read about what you want to in a lot of places.
I eat a lot of bananas.
Yeah, they are. Just basically, they're high. They're one of the things that's kind of high in calories. So, but of course, so is coconut. And right now, coconut is basically a wonder drug, not even a food anymore. It's good for everything.
So does sugar still grow or does cancer grow on the fructose or only on glucose?
That's a little deeper than I've gotten. I think if they determine that your cancer's, feeding on glucose, they try to get you off of all sugars. Period. So yeah, you're very restrictive, high fat diet. Like I think I've read as much as like 90% fat, and then just some like green vegetables. Salad greens and vegetables go along with that.
Meat and veggies, yeah.
Yeah, just adequate protein. And, the bodybuilding, they want a gram or up to 2 grams a pound, of body weight or I think it was 0.8 per kilogram for you guys or something like that. But, that's a lot of protein. But that's people that, you've seen them market Ensure and all these drinks to older folks, to get the protein into it because they're the muscle wasting is what they're worried about as they get older. But actually your body, does a pretty good job of using what you give it to do what it needs to do. If you keep your muscles active, they won't atrophy. That's a big thing with old people. The older you get, the less active you are in some cases. You still see the 90-year-olds that's out doing marathons and stuff too.
That'll be Graham.
That's not a bad thing. Well, I don't know about. I hadn't run 26 miles my entire life. I don't think. But
I think
I have to have something. What's that?
I think the real bad sugar is the high fructose corn syrup now. Like I think when the pop, like the real problem happened was when that started getting added to all the food and then the pop.
Right. I agree totally. You know, I was born in 1959, so you start looking at you were talking about that. That's when they changed over to this food pyramid we have now, you know, and the fruits and vegetables on the bottom, you know, eat 10, 12 servings a day. And that, you know, so you start looking at from that time, you know, the time I was born, each generation, you know, of y'all, and we got away from breastfeeding kids. We're feeding them on soy or, you know, whatever formula that they've come up with now. And so our immune systems are compromised too from that. And, you know, it's a cascade of things. It's a 50, 60 year experiment here, and we're all products of it.
Exactly.
It's not went that well.
That includes all the chemicals in the environment too, and all the steroids and additives. I mean, it's just been.
Yeah. My kids are all breastfed.
Yeah, that's a good thing. See, that's what I'm finding out more and more now is my health problems stem more from my gut bacteria, my gut flora. You was talking about taking a test. That's the next test that I need to take is to, you know, try to determine what kind of gut bacteria I have because I don't digest that well.
Do you do the probiotics or the kombuchas and the live stuff at all?
I use probiotics, and it's hard to find a kombucha. I've not figured out how to make it myself. They say that you can do it, but
it's
letting something sit around and
it's a disgusting process.
Yeah, and if you buy a marketed brand, they've usually got sugar in them.
It's called like a scaby or something. That fucking thing that lives in there.
It forms on top.
Just
right?
to call
it's
the mother
bacteria.
The mother. Yeah. You don't have to call it a scaby. It's the mother.
Oh, it's the mother.
Yeah.
So the one I have is ginger ale kombucha from GT's, I think it is, and it's got like maybe 8 grams of sugar in the whole thing, so there's a bit, but it's not much. As far as it's a pretty big bottle for 8 grams of sugar. That's not too bad.
Yeah,
that's a pretty.
That's not per serving, is it? That's total.
That's fucking per
maybe
serving.
It is per serving.
Yeah, you got they'll catch you
per cup.
They'll catch you with that per serving. That's a trick. That's a marketing trick, big time.
I better watch that.
The spray on butter. Remember I can't believe it's not butter or whatever. You can just spray it, and stuff. And it said it was 0 calorie. But if it's under 0.5, they can call it 0 calorie. So what they did was they just turned their servings per bottle up to like 50. So, that was like one drop of that squirt was 0 calorie, but a full squirt had about 10 calories in it. So, it's like because they made so many servings per bottle, Yeah, that's one of the ways corporate America eats you up. Yeah.
I just listened to this audiobook. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast a lot about. It's called Salt, Sugar, and Fat. Actually, we should get the author on, Michael something. And it was just mind blowing the way that the science behind creating a bliss point for the food industry. So it was about like Kraft and General Mills and all the money they put into just scientifically designing the food so you can eat more and more and more of it. And it has this mouthfeel and a bliss point, like by adding and subtracting salt, sugar, and fat. And then the marketing that went into it. And it's just disgusting what they're, the battle between all these big companies just to fill your house with like garbage food.
Yeah. I know Darren said salt, but we went to the pink Himalayan salt. It's it's more expensive and stuff, but even if it's not better for me, it's pretty cool to be eating salt from the Himalayas. You know?
And I'm telling Darren, this Ben Greenfield guy goes all over it. It is so much better for you than the refined salt. It's unbelievable. It's full of like 70 minerals and nutrients in my little pink salt that I get. So if you can have a bath in it, put it on your food. You can even use it to change the structure of your water. If you pour your water over it after it's been in the sun, your water will change. I'm serious.
I'm not saying it's the same as refined salt.
You were saying table salt is the same as your Himalayan fucking pink salt? And then I started hearing all the science behind it to vindicate me.
What about sea salt?
Yeah, it's better too, I think.
Same shit.
Yeah. any of that you see that's got some little specks of something else in it, you don't really know what it is.
Salt.
Yeah, there you go. But are either one of y'all are y'all salty sweaters? Do you like you turn your cap white when you're playing golf or something like that when you sweat? Well, you need to not worry about the sodium restrictions that they put on your diet, because my dad, as he gotten older, he became sodium deficient because, and that's what I remember him when I was growing up. We'd be out in the field working, and his whole green work shirt would just be white where he was sweating, and he was in the hospital having a knee replacement, and they wouldn't let him go until they got his sodium up, and it took about 4 days to do it.
I fucking
He
love
was salting
salt.
everything. Yeah,
You sweat white?
Are
Are you sweating white? Like, do you have salt? Lift up your arm. No, you're not sweating right now. I'm fucking sweating like a pig right now.
I'm wearing
Yeah, it's been-
shorts. Are you wearing shorts?
Yeah, I am. Shorts.
You got anything else?
I got a couple quotes for you.
Quotes?
Yeah.
That's it?
I got a quote that's
Down and Graham,
And Nickie.
going deep.
There you go.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder.
okay.
Critique.
All right, can you turn that down now?
No
please?
chance.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
Nickie gets full jingle experience.
This is
Thank
from
you.
my this is from my email from Serious Disclosure, my email marketing thing that they sent me. It's historical
What?
quotes from political figures about UFOs.
You're just reading other people's quotes now.
Yeah, it's to be spread. That's why they send this email out.
Okay.
It's like spread it.
So
Just
now
forward it on.
we're a show for fucking
No. It's just a fucking quote from a famous guy, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter.
from who though? It all comes from fucking Richard Greer.
He's the first director of the CIA, 1947 to 1950. And you know what? The CIA was started in, I think, a month after Roswell. I mean, is that a coincidence? I don't know. Might be.
I thought it was right after the KKK.
What?
Oh no, that was
Is
the NRA.
It is time for the truth to be brought out. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officials are soberly concerned about UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. I urge immediate congressional action to reduce the dangers from secrecy about unidentified flying objects. That's from Roscoe Hillenkotter, Aliens from Space, Major Donald E. Kehoe's 1975.
Read by Graham Dunlop, Stephen Greer's shill.
And then there's a note here. Please note the dangers that Hillenkotter talks about are from secrecy, not from UFOs, just to be clear. And then I got a quote here that's appropriate for this episode coming up from Tesla. You want to jingle it? Or
Don't
just-
ever do that again. Which jingle?
Yeah.
I don't have a jingle.
Okay.
And now another edition of the Grimerica Goodies.
So this is Nikola Tesla describing. Well, I'll see what you think he's describing.
Okay.
When wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact is, all things being particles of real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly,
The internet.
irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephony, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we were face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands of miles. And the instruments through which we shall be able to do all of this will fit into our vest pockets. That's Tesla. That's Tesla from 1926.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy,
He's channeling Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there you have it. So we should mention a few things, Darren. We talked about the bloggers a little bit.
New
There's
bloggers.
new bloggers on the website. And then also
Is that what we're saying?
well,
Check them out. Just go to the website, check out the blogs.
Yeah. And people can blog if they want. They
That's
can
right.
send you an email.
Email me
Email Darren for that.
if you can find my email. Just kidding. It's Darren at Grimerica.com.
Also art if they want to submit artwork.
For
episodes or for t-shirts. So we've gone to, even though I do have some physical t-shirts left, I have a bit of an inventory. So if anybody wants them, they can get them for $25. What?
I wore my Take the Shot shirt to Kroger's yesterday. So I got a few smiles, a couple looks. So yeah, pretty successful.
Did I just fucking totally railroad you, Grant?
I don't know what you're trying to do here. So anyways, you got us on Redbubble, right?
We're on Redbubble.
You want to talk about that? People can submit art for that?
People can submit art for that to NAP at Grimerica.com. And that's for different t-shirts. So you can check out, if you just want to go to grimerica.ca/swag, SWAG, that will take you over there. And you can, I think we got like 10 different or 11 different designs on there right now.
Yeah.
And so you can get those as stickers. I think there's some of them you can get as iPhone cases, travel mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, sweaters. Basically, it's a ton of inventory that we never would have been able to handle the overhead on.
Yeah.
So like hoodies and travel mugs probably never would have happened unless we could find something like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, the pricing, it might end up costing a little more than we were doing it for before, but I don't think it will be much, because right now I think it's like, they're from like $25 to $27 for a t-shirt. Plus like $5 shipping, but I think that's Canadian. So once you transfer that over to US, we were $25 US. It's probably pretty much the same.
Yeah, so we don't get much out of it. We get a few bucks, right? $5, something like that, less than that per shirt, let's say, as an example.
Less than $5.
Yeah, so it is a way to donate to the show and wear some swag and just marketing for us.
That's right. So send, if you have some t-shirt designs, you can send those over to nap@grimerica.com.
Right on. So you want to talk about the episode art? Or?
What about it? It's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. But people can still submit art if they want to back episodes and stuff. But I think we're getting rid of the...
Oh, yes, to the back
art
episodes.
But I think we're getting rid of the art contest thing. There just wasn't enough interest, really.
And we got a real good artist.
Yeah.
And, of course, big thanks to Nickie for coming on the show.
My pleasure. I enjoyed every minute of it. I got a little Grimerica altar here. Let me see if I can turn my camera on. Can y'all see it if I turn it on?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, can you see behind me?
Oh, yeah, nice.
I get my big head out of the way. Yeah, made me a little Grimerica altar just for the show. So, yeah, that's my new gray T-shirt. I'm wearing the original blue.
Yeah,
which is it's always a conversation starter too. I had to give my grandson bonus points because he actually knew what a Moai was. So I was impressed.
As long as he doesn't know what the doobie is.
Well, that did come up. What is he smoking? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tobacco. Well, he's an Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Support the show.
Yep.
Grimerica.ca/support. There's all sorts of different monthly options there. Anything from $1 a month, which is about 25 cents a show, up to $30 a month.
Or just a one-time donation really helps as well.
Yeah, one-time donations sometimes really help. And all the time. And
I was a subscriber, and I switched over to donations because me and PayPal had another falling out. So, it's like they're the best thing going sometimes, and they're the worst thing going sometimes. So,
and I fucked up the Bitcoin thing pretty bad recently, so I'm not pushing that too hard right now.
Do you have an address for people though? No, you don't have that yet?
Yeah, I can dig that up. It's on my laptop, so I'll get the proper one. The people that the other Bitcoins went to are not playing ball or even responding to my emails anymore.
Wow.
So first they said that was impossible for that to happen. And then when I sent them the screenshot of the transaction
They
from,
ran away.
they just nothing. I sent them
Just
I've
take
sent
your
like 2
Bitcoin and go.
I've sent a couple emails since then, just like, hey, anyone gonna respond? Nothing. They just say it's $100. They're taking $100 bucks, and they're just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Really?
Nice.
Was it worth it, you motherfuckers?
Yeah. Well,
It was my own stupid fault, really.
Yeah. So yeah, we like to get feedback here as well. Graham at Grimerica.com. Stories and synchronicities and sightings and whatever feedback. It's all good.
Lucid dreams, trip reports.
Yeah. And I do want to make a correction for our intro with Wal Thornhill here. I kind of messed up a couple of his things here. He actually published 2 books. One was Thunderbolts of the Gods, and the second was The Electric Universe. David Talbott was the author of The Saturn Myth. Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Graham gets it wrong.
They did co-author something, though, didn't they?
Yeah,
They have worked together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're not way off base.
No, I just wanted to. Yeah, he was too nice to call me out on it. Not all guests are that polite.
Not all co-hosts are that polite. Well, thanks, Nickie. Thanks, Graham.
All right, guys, it's been a blast.
You guys should enjoy this chat with Wal.
All right, tonight we're crisscrossing all over the globe. We have Wal Thornhill from Australia, and he is from the Electric Universe, and he's published a couple books with David Talbott, The Saturn Myth, and Thunderbolts of the Gods, and he's got his website, Hollow Science, which summarizes the Electric Universe model. He's been a keynote speaker at some workshops. Actually, they've got Electric Universe workshops happening since, I should say conferences happening since 2012. It's super interesting content here. The Thunderbolts project website is full of good information. It's amazing. Yeah, we're super excited. And this has all come about because Nickie Benefield won our contest for fundraising, and he is with us tonight to join us. Thanks for coming on, Nickie.
On his new iPad.
Oh, no problem. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, got the iPad going. It's a wonderful thing.
So thanks for coming on, Wal. How you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to spring bursting out over here.
You son of a
spring,
bitch.
Right, yeah.
We're going into winter.
Yeah. Dog days of summer here have been high 90s all week.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
So, Wal, this is one of those things. I was listening to a lot of your YouTube lectures and reading your website, and it's a lot of deep information. Like I feel like you guys are onto something really big here, and it's hard to know where to even start. So I guess it'd be best to start at just give us an idea of the website, like the strategy of your website, I think, and then we can get into some of the finer stuff. But it's pretty deep, so I kind of want to let you just give us a little rundown.
Yes, well, my website began as an attempt to provide interested people with a scientific argument for all of the various things that were being proposed in regards to an electric universe. It's a very simple model, and of course this is the way science was heading in the 19th century before 20th century madness overtook us. And it just says that the electric force is the only force you need to explain all that we observe, and that the universe is fundamentally an electrical phenomenon. But this has taken a lifetime to get to that point, to that simplification. Along the way, it's been a long journey. My colleagues in America, Dave Talbott and many others now, are involved with the Thunderbolts project, it's called. And that came out of the work of David Talbott and a number of other mytho-historians, I think is the best term to describe them. These are people who were inspired by Immanuel Velikovsky way back in the 1950s with his best-selling book, Worlds in Collision. Now, that caused a real storm in scientific circles. In fact, it resulted in a modern-day book burning by Macmillan, the textbook publisher. because the academic said, if you insist on publishing or continuing to publish this book, we'll withdraw our orders for your textbooks. So Macmillan had to hand over the rights to Doubleday and burn whatever copies they had left. Now, it was a bestseller for months on end in the New York Times listings, so that was quite a thing. There were a number of scientists who supported Velikovsky, but the astronomers lost it totally, and they said that his ideas of planets moving around on orbits which were threatening within his memory of mankind disobeyed Newton's laws. Now, theoreticians are very fond of their man-made laws, and anyone who challenges them is in for a rough ride, and Velikovsky certainly copped it. Anyway, the way that Velikovsky worked was the same kind of a technique that detectives use, that is, a forensic technique. You've got a whole lot of unreliable witnesses from all around the world who said various things about what was seen in the sky. What you have to do is to look for the odd things that accord. You know, it's like if it was a bank robber and had two different coloured socks on, and more than one witness said that, then you would take that as being concrete proof that the witness, the robber, was wearing two different coloured socks, and so on. So you can, by piecing together information from right around the world, they managed to put together quite a detailed story, which was an improvement, an extension on Velikovsky's work, because Velikovsky, of course, being a pioneer, didn't get everything right. No pioneer can. So I was inspired because of the notion that the solar system had a history, and a very interesting history, a dynamic one, and that electricity was involved. This was the big challenge that Velikovsky threw down to astronomers. He said that if Newton's laws are sacrosanct, then this book is a heresy. That was in the opening pages of his book. And, of course, it was treated as a heresy, which really isn't a scientific way to approach any new idea. The people, David Talbott in particular, I met him in 1974 for the first time at the first and only international conference on Velikovsky's work, which was called The Recent History of the Solar System. And it was 20 years later that I caught up with David again when asking him for a copy of his book, The Saturn Myth. And he said he was having his first conference, World Conference, in Portland, Oregon. That was in 1994. And we got talking, and I said, he said to me, "Have I got anything to present?" And I said, "Yes, I have." And so he invited me to that meeting. Now, it was at that meeting that I saw the imagery projected on the screen, which convinced me that what David Talbott had uncovered was actual images of electrical discharges between planets. In other words, the Thunderbolts of the gods. And it was 6 years later, in the year 2000, when we managed to get an expert on high-energy plasma experiments from Los Alamos Labs to attend our conference. And when he saw the imagery that we were presenting, he said, "This is classified information." He said, "This is the kind of thing we see in these high-energy plasma experiments." He then went out. He said that he goes hunting occasionally in the desert around Los Alamos and would walk past the Indian petroglyphs. And he said that with this realization, he regarded these petroglyphs in an entirely new light. It never occurred to him that they were actually mimicking the things that he was seeing in his high-energy experiments. So that was the point of convergence between the mytho-historical record and the forensic investigation and my scientific angle, trying to work out from what Velikovsky had written how you would explain all of this in real scientific terms. And so that's how it's all happened. Now, The American group, with David Talbott leading the charge, has created the Thunderbolts.info website, which is where most of the activity takes place. My articles tend to be longer, more aimed at those who are interested in science. And also, I've been so busy in recent years that most of my material ends up as YouTube space news on Thunderbolts.info, and I haven't had time, or I need somebody to help me put up material on my website, so it's a bit sparse. But certainly it gives you a very good historical story starting back in about 1998 or so, which is when I first began really publishing this kind of material. So that gives you an idea. There's the two websites, mine, which is for those who are interested in more the scientific aspects, and the Thunderbolts, which covers everything and has all sorts of means of access to those who are interested to get involved.
What's your website URL?
It's HoloScience, HOLO science.com. The origin of the holo, of course, was from holistic. In other words, the science of the electric universe has no boundaries. You can be interested in almost any subject, and it will have some connection.
Yeah, I love how you have all the synopsises on there as well. Like both websites are really good to just lead you through a chapter by chapter summary of everything.
Yes, I think you'll find more new, challenging and new ideas on one page than you find in whole books.
So go ahead, Nickie.
I'm sorry. I'm new to all this, and that's the website Thunderbolts info was where I didn't even know the true definition of plasma. I'd heard, I thought it was part of your blood or something. So,
yes.
It started out there, and, so there's a lot of information there. YouTube videos makes it easy for the intellectually challenged to follow along, so really appreciate it.
Yeah, the whole idea is that the idea is simple, and we should be able to teach this or begin to teach it in primary school in place of the nonsense they're taught now. Because it opens up science to everyone, people who want to try experiments in their garage, and those who are interested in the arts and cultural aspects, because this says a lot about the history of mankind and the things we suffered and why we behave rather in an insane way today, a destructive way, both towards each other and to the planet we live on. And when you begin to understand what we've been through, you can begin to find ways of healing from that. And I think one of the big messages that Velikovsky left, one of his final books, Mankind in Amnesia, that was his major concern, was that mankind did not understand why he was behaving so irrationally. And of course, when you look at the news and what's going on around the world, it is totally irrational. And he said that just like a patient who suffered a terrible trauma and has suffered amnesia as a result, it is possible to heal from it. But the first thing is to be led to understand that event that caused all of the pain and the horror.
And what event would we be talking about?
The events that generally referred to as doomsday. In other words, ancient man was confronting forces in the sky which he felt was going to destroy the earth and everything on it. And in some places, of course, it did. It's almost unimaginable what those people witnessed. It was both sometimes fantastic and awe-inspiring, and at other times more frightening than anything you can imagine today.
So this is interesting right off the bat. I remember we've talked to people about. I assume that would be some sort of an impact.
No, impacts are generally avoided in the electric universe, because when you understand gravity, you realize that you cannot have a stable universe if all you've got is an attractive force, because obviously everything will try and fall together and form a clump if gravity is only attractive. But there is an astronomer, or was an astronomer, I should say, he died just recently, who will go down in the history books as the second Galileo. His name was Halton Arp, A-R-P, and he wrote a book called Seeing Red after years of trying to get his work accepted by, or at least looked at seriously, by the establishment. And his work showed that the Big Bang never happened, that he was actually worked with Hubble, and even Hubble didn't believe in the Big Bang. He thought that that was the least likely explanation for what's called the redshift of distant stars, faint stars. Halton Arp showed that the high redshift and low brightness is a function of the age. A very youthful object has low energy, its light is faint, and the spectrum it puts out is shifted to the low energy end of the spectrum, to the red. And that was the real origin of most of the redshift. Instead of these things,
right?
Exactly. Instead of them rushing away, he said the universe is fairly static and it's of unknown age and extent. So that paints a completely different picture. But he said if the universe is fairly static, and he deduced that from the calculations and his extensive observations, he was primarily an observational astronomer, not a theoretician. And he produced the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, which is still referred to today by astronomers. If the universe is fairly static and things aren't either rushing apart or falling inwards, it suggests that gravity must be a repulsive force over the large distances between galaxies and stars. And I've come up with a model which explains that. It has vast repercussions for our understanding of what's going on in space and in stars and everything. I mean, it's a completely different cosmology, the electric universe.
Does the solar system still operate in the conventional manner? Like, I mean,
yes,
like
gravity.
The rotations and everything else still work the same. It's just not gravity at play.
Well, we call it gravity, but gravity itself is an electrical force. It's so pathetically weak that we can use a little magnet to lift things away from the 6 sextillion tons of the Earth. It's almost zero, the force of gravity. But we're attracted to the Earth just like iron filings are to a magnet. And I hope my wife takes that. The thing is that, of course, that an iron filing is magnetizable. In other words, it doesn't care which pole of the magnet you point at it. It will go to the north or the south pole. It's attracted equally to either. Now, large bodies like the Earth and the Sun and the other planets essentially have one pole facing inwards and the other pole facing outwards, and we're attracted to the outward pole. But that means that all bodies have the same outward pole facing each other, and that means that they will repel each other just like the two south poles of a magnet will do. And everyone's experienced that, trying to push the two like poles of a magnet together, two magnets together.
That's right.
You can feel that force pushing them apart.
So
that's what.
sorry.
Go ahead. No.
So basically, that's like the Earth is never going to fall into the sun or fall out of its fallout. There is, because that's one thing that's always struck me is, it'd have to be so fucking perfect for it to get that speed that it doesn't fall out of the orbit of the sun and it doesn't fall into the sun. It makes more sense to me that it's stuck there. It can't get closer. It can't get farther.
Yes. One of the breakthroughs I had a few years ago was to work out how the solar system can be like clockwork when ancient man witnessed Venus as a comet, for instance, and so on. And yet Venus today has the most circular orbit in the solar system. So whatever Venus was doing was actually circularizing its orbit. And just recently I've had proof of the concept that I put forward, and that is that Venus today is ejecting more electricity, if you like, electrons, than the Earth is. So it's still discharging. It's an electrical discharge that is the important thing.
So that brings me back to what I was going to ask you about the ancient man again, who saw that, and then that trauma was carried through almost like a morphic resonance, like Rupert Sheldrake kind of thing, until we're still living with that trauma now. The
Yes.
fact that we could be, demolished at any second if some sort of cosmic event happened.
Oh, yes. I mean, and you can see this in the films, the movies, and that we've got all the disaster movies.
Yeah.
And you've got to ask yourself, well, why are we obsessed with these things? And why was it that people were frightened to death of comets in the past when no one had ever experienced anything other than just a bright light in the sky, perhaps, or even a dull light in the sky, moving across the heavens? There's no reason to think that was going to herald the fall of kings unless you understand the history, where kingship was actually more or less associated with the old planetary gods.
Wow.
So, this is the thing that I enjoyed about Velikovsky's book, was that he ranged far and wide, but drew all of these strings, if you like, together that were just dangling with no obvious connection. He drew them together and made a picture which was both profound and, for me, intellectually very exciting. I think I was lucky. I read his book before I went to university, and so I entered university very skeptical of a lot of the things I was being taught, and that is a great way to do science.
Yeah. So that part of Velikovsky's theory you guys have stuck with part of that in the EU then? That
oh yes.
That Venus.
We
can you describe? Can you describe that
credit.
A little bit more for people that aren't aware of it? So it's about Venus and the collision, right?
Sure. Yes. Yes. His thesis was that both Mars and Venus played crucial roles in mankind's history, and I think one of the difficulties he created for himself was that he brought them down into historical times, back about 1500 BC. And that created all kinds of difficulties of providing evidence for this. Because at that time, you had the pyramids had been built and there was information written on the walls in hieroglyphs and so on. And you could look at those and say, well, where's your evidence? It was the people who followed David Talbott, Ev Cochrane, Eduardo Cardona are the principal people who showed that even at the time the pyramids were built and those hieroglyphs were chiseled on the walls, that the events were still a memory even then. And it wasn't until we met up with Tony Peratt, as I mentioned before, the plasma physicist in 2000, that we realized that it was the prehistoric people, the ones who chiseled those strange stick figures and so on rocks, which is a very difficult thing to do, by the way, and that those figures that they chiseled, which look quite odd, actually mimic plasma formations, high-energy plasma formations. And they're found around the world. It's not a case of just in North America. They're found everywhere. Even the Australian Aboriginal people have certain figures down here which, if you rotate them, account for their latitude and longitude, they match up with the North American Indian ones. There's also their stories of figures in the sky and the power flowed down from them through some column. And this is all aspects of the later work. What Velikovsky did, though, was to provide evidence for Venus having been a comet, and that evidence is incontrovertible, in my opinion. There's no way you can deny it. Also, as a result of that, he predicted that Venus would be extremely hot because he said it was incandescent within human memory. And, of course, the very first spacecraft that flew past Venus, their temperature readings went off the scale, so they had to do the experiment again on another spacecraft. And they found that it's some metals are actually molten at the surface temperature of Venus. He also said that the rotation would be odd, and of course it rotates slowly backwards. So all of these things were not predicted. There's nothing like it from any astronomer. And yet these are the things that he predicted before those spacecraft confirmed it. Now, as far as Mars is concerned, Mars, of course, is known as the god of war. And the question is, well, why? It's not just to do with the red colour. In fact, the red colour has a lot of significance in a lot of religions around the world associated with the planetary god. But the fact that Mars was actually close enough for the ancients to witness surface features is shown by the fact that that colossal gash on Mars, that's Valles Marineris, it stretches for a third of the way around the planet. Mars was referred to by the North American Indians as Scarface. And of course, the later legends about Achilles and so on, who was a version of Mars, he gets scarred in battle as well. So the ancients saw Mars up close enough to be able to see surface features. All of this means that the solar system we have today is not what we had originally, that there has been chaos, but that chaos has been sorted out. And the big question for me was, how do you do that? And my question to Velikovsky, when I was lucky enough to visit him at his home in 1979, was, what is it we don't understand about gravity? Because that was the thing with which the astronomers beat him down. And he felt that it had to do with the electrical structure of matter. Now, everything we're made from is actually made up of charged particles, but they're there in equal numbers of positive and negative, so that on balance, everything is neutral. We don't get electrocuted when we touch things. And this electrical aspect of matter can be looked at as the reason why, for instance, molecules form. All the solids and liquids and everything we witness, both on Earth and out in space, is a result of electrical forces between atoms. Now, what I did was I said, okay, what about gravity then? What if the particles, the charged particles inside atoms, are made up of smaller atoms, if you like, smaller orbiting systems? And if you try that model, it's a case of repeated patterns, which nature is famous for. You actually find out that tiny distortions of subatomic particles can give rise to this very weak force we call gravity. But just as atoms and the particles inside atoms can produce magnetism, gravity is like a form of magnetism, but at the subatomic level. And that's why you cannot shield it, because the particles don't care whether they're in a metal atom or a non-metal or whatever. They'll just daisy chain, if you like. So that's why you can't shield from gravity. All of this made sense. And it also showed me that you could explain how a gravitational system, which is inherently unstable, if one of the planets was to diverge off its orbit a tiny bit, there is absolutely nothing in the gravitational theory of Newton or Einstein to restore order. It will continue to leave its clockwork path until the whole system falls apart. And, of course, the scientists of the past knew that. They had no answer for it, so it's one of those questions that's sort of been shoved in the bottom drawer and forgotten about.
So I guess
but you have
the particulate form of gravity, for lack of a better term, would just be like it's not traveling much distances. It's a lot more local.
No, actually, this what I call the longitudinal force, it's like the difference between waving on a rope, which is light, and pulling on the rope. You know, if you have two people either end of a rope and you wave one end, it takes some time for the wave to reach the other end. Whereas if you tug on it, the other person feels it very quickly. And this is another aspect of the electric universe. It makes sense of light and gravity, and gravity operates instantly. If there's any delay in the force of gravity, the solar system would fly apart quite rapidly, because all of the planets would be pulled to where the objects no longer are. and it'd be like swinging a weight around your head. Your hand is pulling the weight, if you like, the rock or whatever, slightly ahead of where the center of the rotation is, which means that it's trying to fly away. And of course, the planets have nothing to hold them there, so, apart from their normal gravity. So the whole system falls apart.
Until they came up with dark energy, right?
Well, yeah. Somebody said that with black holes and dark energy and dark matter, soon there'll be so much darkness we'll know nothing.
Yeah.
But, all of these things that are invented, and this is one of the features of 20th century science, when they started handing out Nobel Prizes for inventing new particles and new forces, of course, everyone was gung-ho. And any problem that pops up, you just invent a new particle or a new force. But as one well-known astrophysicist has pointed out, there are now more fudge factors than there are actually observations to prove the theory. So science is in a real mess, and quite a few well-credentialed scientists are actually writing books about it now. I've just finished reading one by Alex Onziker called Bankrupting Physics, and it's a scathing expose of the way science is being done today, and all of the language and so on, most of which makes no sense whatsoever. You talk about particle physics and they talk about quarks, and then you've got up and down ones, and ones with charm and others with colour. What the heck does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just nonsense, but it satisfies mathematicians, who are not physicists, by the way. Physicists, or physics, was originally natural philosophy, and that was where you thought about the ramifications of what you were saying and whether you could justify it. Nowadays, if you can work out an equation and put it on a computer screen, everyone's happy. But that's virtual reality. It's not physics. So some people look at what we're doing, which doesn't involve much mathematics. In fact, I've referred to E equals mc squared the way Stephen Hawking did. Provided you only use that once in your book, you'll only halve the number of readers. But I've pointed out that even E equals mc squared is not understood by scientists at present. Otherwise, they wouldn't be building that Large Hadron Collider. So this is one of the things I think that grabs a lot of engineers and practical people, is that they can see the sense in the electric universe. They can see ways of using it to make real breakthroughs. And this is, of course, happening now. There are experiments being carried out which could be quite groundbreaking.
Is this like China's new communication system?
The funny thing is that we really don't understand how to communicate. Using radio waves, only donkeys would use slow-moving radio waves to transfer information. Anyway, just a bit off the track. But all sorts of things open up, and you can see the connections between various things, even in the realm of biology and consciousness and memory, all of these things. The electric universe provides a model for experimenters to think about ways of testing new ideas. And this is the problem in science. It is a monoculture. It has single ideas which are consensus. And of course, as Michael Crichton pointed out, if it's a consensus, it ain't science. And that's true. All of the big breakthroughs in the past have come from individuals, and often those who were outside the discipline in which they finally became famous in. But we seem to forget, we forget the lessons of the past. That's the problem.
How are planets and stuff formed in the EU model?
That's easy. In fact, it's actually been discovered by the Herschel Infrared Space Telescope, where they can peer through the dust and whatnot in those molecular clouds out in deep space. And what they found surprised astronomers because they saw stars forming along a glowing filament. Now, gravity doesn't work that way. Gravity sucks things into a central point. It doesn't suck things into a linear arrangement. But this method of forming stars was actually predicted by plasma cosmologists, and plasma cosmology is a peer-reviewed discipline recognised by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, one of the biggest professional organisations in the world. However, astronomers are not interested because they don't attend plasma sciences meetings because they're satisfied with a kind of bastardised version of plasma science, which Hans Alfvén, the father of plasma cosmology, warned would lead to a crisis in astrophysics. Well, it's just a case, as usual, of how bad does it have to get before you declare it a crisis. Because it really is shambles right now. Anyway, we get back to the stars. What happens is that you get, in effect, a lightning bolt inside a cloud. I mean, we see them on Earth. Well, they're out there in space too. It's just that they're hidden inside the cloud. And it's not only stars that are formed along that lightning bolt, because electromagnetically what happens is that it forms a kind of magnetic pinch. It squeezes material from around that filament, and those filaments are just like the ones you see in those little novelty plasma balls that sort of writhe around as if they're alive. Well, the same thing happens in these clouds. The filaments draw dust and gas towards them and very powerfully compress it along that filament until it glows. And then the stars form along the filament, but also objects of all sizes, planets, moons, all sorts of sizes form along that filament. But the filament is moving, and as it moves, it leaves these objects behind, and these little objects, depending on how they formed and when they formed, are all moving at different speeds. So you've got this zoo of stars and planets and all sorts of objects moving around, as Tony Peratt said in his high-energy experiments, electrical experiments. The little plasmoids, he called them, scatter like buckshot. Now, in gravitational theory, those objects would just move around chaotically and without capturing each other. But in the electric universe model, the exchange of these thunderbolts, or these electrical exchanges between bodies, actually causes capture and circularization of orbits. So this is how you form planetary systems. And when you look at I was just going to mention quickly, now they've discovered more than 3,500 of these exoplanetary systems, and what do you reckon? They all look strange and different to what we have here in this the Sun system. But when you think all of these objects, most of them, I should say, not all, are captured, then the capture process you'll end up with a complete zoo of exoplanetary systems, and this is exactly what they found.
So that's getting back to the original Venus thing, the Velikovsky thing. So there's a collision, and then they basically, instead of falling into the, like by gravity, they would snap into place due to the electromagnetic, pressure or whatever, or
no, actually, it's quite simple. What happens is that when two bodies approach one another, they have around them what's called a plasma sheath, which is like a cocoon in which the electrical field of the star or the planet is contained. And it's only when those cocoons, which are huge, I mean, the sun's extends to about 100 times the radius of the Earth's orbit out into space, and it's known as the heliosphere. That plasma sheath is the extent of the sun's electrical environment. It's huge. Now, another star, like the sun, moving towards us, would, when it was twice that distance away, or even further, begin to connect with the sun's electrical environment. And when that happens, all hell breaks loose because the one or other of the bodies has to get rid of charge to sort of match the new environment, and in doing so, it becomes a comet. That's all a comet is. It's an object, charged object, trying to achieve electrical equilibrium with a changing environment. As comets rush towards the sun, the electrical environment is getting more intense, and they get to the point where it starts stripping matter off and ejecting it into space in beams, electrical beams. It's nothing to do with water evaporating off the surface. And it's this exchange of charge which makes the difference, because that changes the mass and the gravity of the object that's discharging. And it does it in such a way that it tends to circularize the orbit and to cause capture. So when these planets and stars are all formed in one of these lightning bolts in a molecular cloud, you have objects of all sizes and electrical capabilities wandering around, just ripe for capture. Now, the sun has these gas giants all at great distances away from it. They were all captured at different times. The story of how the solar system formed is just a bedtime story to try and make us feel safe, because it all happened billions of years ago, and it's all been clockwork ever since. It's been anything but. The Earth was involved in the last capture event, and that's what led to the final episodes which Velikovsky uncovered. One of the team, Eduardo Cardona, did a lot of work on the earlier memories of mankind, and that story is just phenomenal. I mean, it would it would out science fiction, any science fiction movie ever made, because and then it's real, and as they say, truth is often stranger than fiction. So the story of the Earth and the human race is quite a mind bender, but we can trace it back quite well.
What was that book called again?
Well, Eduardo Cardona has written a series of books which are very detailed in their research. I recommend them to anyone who really wants to know the story of the Earth. And that's the Star series, and they're available on the Thunderbolts.info website.
Oh, okay, good.
Now, the Saturn sun, is that what you're talking about? That the sun captured electricity from Saturn? Is that?
Yes.
I read stuff about that, and so that's where that came from. And was that where Mars was involved and became so scarred? And okay,
that's right. Yep. The ancients witnessed Mars being scarred. That's why the legends refer to the battles of Mars. And his fight against the Chaos Monsters, which were the fire-breathing dragons, which is a rendition of some of these plasma discharges. There is no such thing as a fire-breathing dragon. However, the Chinese one is even playing with the celestial ball, which was Venus. So it gives you... it's funny, people who get to know the electric universe material and the thunderbolts of the gods walk into museums and they see everything in a completely different light to what's written on all of the little plaques.
Yeah. So what was I going to say about that? So do you think that the growing Earth theory fits in with this whole model? Or the other question I have is the other question I have is well, let's answer that one first. So you don't think that fits into the model?
No, it's unnecessary.
Or growing planets, really.
Of course. Yeah, one of the ideas, of course, to try and explain the shape of the Earth and the surface features is the idea that you can fit the continental patterns together like a jigsaw puzzle, and that is that shows that they were once together and they've moved apart. Well, no one has been able to show how you produce a force to actually move them apart in the first place. The other thing is that to expand the Earth, which is one popular option, requires that you add material to the interior of the Earth, and there's no known way of doing that. The thing about the Earth, too, is that if those kinds of things happened on the Earth, then they should have happened on Venus and they should have happened on Mars. and you should see evidence of the same kind of thing, an expansion of bodies in other parts of the solar system, but you don't. The Earth is unique, and this is one of the aspects of this story of how planets are formed. Every planet and star has its own history and its own story. They are not, the planets around the sun were not formed at the same time or just after the sun formed, and from the same material. They all have their own unique stories. And if you look at the Earth and the shape of those scars on the Earth, because the ocean basins are scars, a huge amount of material has been removed from them, they have the features of a massive pole-to-pole electric discharge, as if we were caught up in the crossfire between two larger bodies. And one of the features of electrical scarring is that you get parallel sides to the scars, and you get terracing, which of course are the continental shelves. The stretching Earth doesn't actually explain continental shelves. And also the electric discharges cause, what do they call them? Coronal discharge streamers at right angles to the main discharge channel, which is the kind of patterns that they've found in the mid-oceanic ridges. So the whole thing is probably a birth scar of the Earth, because when I said that bodies of all sizes are formed in these cosmic lightning bolts, when the lightning filament moves on, the objects left behind find themselves under different degrees of electrical stress, and the simplest way for an object to relieve that stress is to get rid of material, eject a lot of matter. And this is why the gas giants have so many moons and so on. To achieve equilibrium, all of the close orbiting objects were ejected from within the body. Remember I said that gravity is dipolar, which means that there is a repulsive force inside these bodies which can assist the ejection of matter from within a planet, particularly the gas giants and stars. And this is why you find hot Jupiters orbiting so close to stars, which is a total puzzle for astronomers. And the reason is that those hot Jupiters were actually spat out of the star in an attempt to achieve stability.
Wow. So he does show, like we had Neil Adams on the show, and he was talking about the growing, I shouldn't say growing Earth or expanding planets, because he showed that some of the moons, it looks like, some of the moons around Saturn and Jupiter, I can't remember, there was really, Europa was a really crazy one, and it really did look like it expanded, but...
Yeah. Now, if you look at the pattern on Europa, it's a series of trenches that have been dug by lightning hurtling across the surface from one side of the moon to the other. And where it terminates, there's a chaotic terrain which has been broken up by the discharge leaving the body. So I would suggest that Europa was caught in the crossfire between another large body and Jupiter. And, in its orbit, it would come around and get zapped. And in the process, the easiest way for an electrical discharge to move past the moon is to tear around its surface. And that appears to be what happened on Europa. The channels themselves show that material has been, it's dug a trench and tossed the material out to either side. And this is characteristic of a surface lightning discharge.
So if you were there, would you just see would you see an event, or would it just be the Bugs Bunny and it just be like some dirt goes flying past you, or would it be like a crazy explosive?
It would be like a linear explosion, but it would be extremely rapid, at the speed of lightning.
So what I find hard to grasp visually is like the a lot of your work makes sense to me as far as like everything's electrical as well, right? But when you talk about the catastrophes that can happen in a little solar system like ours, I feel like the universe is actually pretty stable, like that all these galaxies move around. Like we haven't seen a lot of change in our time. Is that just because really our time is such a small speck, universally, or wouldn't we be witnessing this type of event happening in closer galaxies now that we have the technology? Or not galaxies, galaxies.
Planetary systems.
Planetary systems,
Yeah, it's only been in the last few decades that we've been actually able to detect these bodies orbiting nearby stars. But with the new telescopes that are being proposed and those that are being built, we should be able to get more information. At present, we don't have enough information about these systems. But I think even now, with the anomalies they're finding, they need a new model, a new theory to help them understand them, because right now it's a complete puzzle. And so in science, it's always good to have a competing idea so that you can test the two and see which one is better. Unfortunately, as I said, science today is a monoculture of beliefs which are very hard to shift, especially because of the institutionalized and government-funded nature of science now. If you go back and read the old science journals of a century or more ago, you see how freewheeling the ideas were, and the lack of censorship. People could propose all sorts of interesting and outrageous ideas, but they weren't stopped from doing it. Nowadays, people are stopped, which means that it's much slower to get progress than I think it's ever been in history.
But it's only a matter of time now that it seems like this new technology that we're getting and these new ways to see the universe, a lot of those results are fitting in with the EU.
They are, and this is always encouraging, because when you propose a model, you like to see confirmation, or at least discoveries which are easy to explain. You don't have to invent new forces, particles, or any other stuff like that. It can fit within the current model. Yeah. And this is typical. It's been my experience now for decades that the amazing and puzzling discoveries that have been made are easily explained and just fit in with the electric universe. I've been able to make predictions which themselves have been quite outrageous, but also which have been confirmed by space probes. And that also is a good sign of a good model, a good theory.
Does the EU theory allow for faster than light travel?
That's a very good question, and there is a kind of another question that you would ask, and that is, why would you bother? Because when you understand that in the electric universe, all matter is connected practically in real time, especially on our galactic level, and that means that there appears to be a means of communication. The universe is full of information because it's not empty at all. The vacuum of space is full. It has to be able to let light pass from one place to another. When you understand that the universe is full of matter, it's full of information, and that gravity itself communicates between planets and stars, and that their location right now, that's information, then it seems possible to transmit information over vast distances instantaneously. And if we can figure out how to do that, then it removes the need, possibly, to go physically exploring nearby stars and so on. However, the question of whether we can physically travel faster than light, I've been thinking a lot about that. It depends upon the effect of the medium through which we're travelling at the speed of light. Now, light itself travels through a medium. It has to. So the idea...
Dark matter.
Well, it's the ether. The old ether, which both Maxwell and Heaviside and Einstein all felt was necessary, but Einstein seemed to forget that when he later put his postulates of special relativity together. So you need a medium, and the electric universe proposes that medium is neutrinos. It's composed of neutrinos. Right. And the speed of light is the speed with which those neutrinos can react to a varying electric field. Now, if we try and pass matter through neutrinos faster than they can react, do you have a bow shock? And what does that bow
Cheese
shock
grater.
do? Yeah. And I mean, when particles in nuclear reactors travel faster than the speed of light in water, they give off what's called Cherenkov radiation. So does that mean that if we travel faster than light through the so-called vacuum of space, which isn't empty, as I said, do we give off Cherenkov radiation? You know, is Star Trek right? As the as the craft travels at various warp speeds, is it giving off Cherenkov radiation? And in so doing, of course, it's losing energy. And how much energy did you have to put in to achieve that speed and continue to accelerate? The whole idea that you need infinite energy to accelerate a mass to the speed of light comes from interpreting the resistance of matter to being accelerated as being a measure of its mass. It's not. Mass itself is an electrical variable because E equals mc squared tells us so. Energy and mass are properties of matter, and they're related to the electrical energy within them.
So theoretically, then that means that like anti-gravity and all that is probably obtainable through some sort of like electrical or magnetic. It's like some sort of electromagneticism. So like if you say you could hypothetically make a little spaceship that sits on the ground and like flip your pole, could you just be like gone? And if you were, would you just be gone into whatever?
Well, I was going to ask a similar question eventually about people on Earth in some sort of secret, like space program way, utilizing these theories and this energy for some sort of anti-gravity travel. I mean, it seems to me like somebody's traveling around in these ships, and it's like they could be utilizing this type of theory.
Yeah, well, the gravitational field of the Earth is largely down to the fact that the nucleus inside each atom is 2,000 to 4,000 times heavier than the electrons that are orbiting around it. That means that in each atom, the nucleus is offset from the center towards the center of the Earth. It's offset from the center of the atom towards the center of the Earth. And because the atom itself is held rigidly in rocks or us or anything else on the Earth's surface, each atom forms a tiny electric dipole. And that electric dipole influences the shapes of the subatomic particles within the atom. This is all getting a bit complicated, but all I can say is that all you have to do is to change the orientation of the electric field within the atom, and you'll get a modification of gravity.
And that could be instant.
Of course, well, gyros do it. So you spin a gyro around, and the nuclei are being offset considerably from the direction that gravity's trying to pull it. And that's why you get all those weird effects, because the gyroscope is more in touch with all the matter in the rest of the universe than it is with the Earth, because, as I said, if gravity is a repulsive force between celestial bodies, then the question is, well, why do they go into orbit? You know, they should just avoid each other. The answer is that it's the inward pressure from all the other repulsive objects in the universe which forces you towards the sun, and the sun pushes you away. It's a different way of looking at gravity, quite entirely. Now, if you spin a gyro, the nucleus is offset from the center of the atom, but this time it's towards the periphery of the gyro, which means that it's responding to the force from all the other matter in the universe in a different way to what the Earth is. And this is why gyros behave in such odd ways.
So does that mean that there's a hole in the middle of the Earth?
Who knows? It could be. Certainly there are strange things going on, and I'm very interested in any information about deep seismic readings, ones that pass close to the core, so-called core of the Earth. And just recently it was found, I think, that there would discontinuities which were unexpected. Now, it's the kind of thing I would expect if the interior of the Earth was unable, it was hollow and it had an interior surface, if you like. This is the kind of thing that you can actually consider as a possibility. The thing is that I'm sort of out there on the boundaries. As somebody, a science journalist here in Australia called me the boundary rider of science. So I come up with the ideas. Unfortunately, there's only a few mathematicians who are following, and they're the ones who can come along and say, okay, here's the model, apply the maths, and here's what the result is. And this is the work for the future, of course. The mathematicians have to be returned to the back room where they belong, and the natural philosophers and the people like me should be throwing ideas at them rather than them getting involved in the beauty of their equations, which is something we repeatedly have done through history.
They should just be fact-checking.
The young Earth theory people, the standard model says we got like electromagnetic field around Earth that's decaying at a steady rate. And so they extrapolate that it could only be so old because gravity would have been so dense, billions of years ago, it would have never survived. So how does that EU address that?
Well, the Earth situation now is completely different to what it was, say, 12, 20,000 years ago. So there are some aspects of the Earth which are possibly still changing, still adjusting to the new environment. However, I should say that magnetism of celestial bodies is not understood. Astronomers are quite happy to push their models inside the sun and inside the Earth where no one can tell whether they're right or wrong. And then they make up stories generally which don't work. One option that was proposed by some geophysicists and which should have been taken more seriously is that if you have a charged body, a surface charge on the Earth, and the Earth is spinning, it will generate a dipole magnetic field. But the geophysicists turned away from it because they were told, no, it would require a very high voltage on the surface of the Earth, and we don't find one. Well, if they'd turned to the plasma physicists, they would have told them that the field that we do see on Earth, and it is there, it's about 100 volts per metre as you go up from the Earth's surface, that only measures the electric field between us and the ionosphere. And then beyond that, you've got another boundary, also known as a plasma sheath or double layer, between the sun's environment, electrical environment, and the Earth, and that's called the magnetosphere, only because the plasma sheath traps the magnetic field inside it. So that's one aspect, that's one possibility. The Earth is charged and it is rotating, and that's creating some magnetic field. But it's the very it's a behaviour of matter itself that generates magnetic fields, and it's very strongly allied to gravity. The two are very similar in their origin. So even the rotating, gravitating body may be responsible for some of that magnetic field. There are also electric currents induced in the near surface of the Earth called telluric currents, and they change the Earth's magnetic field from day to day. There are people who actually monitor that. So in our current state of ignorance, I wouldn't predict anything about the Earth's magnetic field.
Okay.
What happened 12 to 20,000 years ago?
That was the time when the Earth was adjusting to its newfound home, because we were not a part of the solar system until recently. Prior to that, we were where you would find most life in the universe, and that is as a close orbiting satellite of a brown dwarf star.
Which was Saturn.
I should say the brown dwarfs are not dwarfs. if you were to take Saturn or Jupiter and light up their magnetosphere, despite the fact that Jupiter is about 5 times more distant or 4 times more distant at opposition than the Sun, it would appear as big as the Sun in the sky. Now, that means that if Jupiter and Saturn were taken away from the Sun and placed out in interstellar space, they would light up as brown dwarfs, minor stars. Now, the electric universe paints a completely different picture of what a star is. Certainly it's not a thermonuclear bomb going off slowly. The very idea that massive bodies like the Sun would have a core of the lightest element known, hydrogen, is a pretty silly model. You know, it was a kind of desperation model because when it was invented back in the early 1900s, the geologists were throwing up this problem of the Earth seemed to, from their measurements, be older and older than anyone thought. And then they said, but hang on a minute, how can the Sun keep burning for that length of time? So when nuclear energy was discovered, of course, the geologists and everyone grasped it like drowning men as a solution to this problem of how do you keep the Sun burning for the geological time spans necessary. Well, the electric universe says that this just assumes that all stars are isolated objects with no connection to anything else, and that therefore they have to burn like a campfire in the sky. So the thermonuclear model is just a modern version of the old campfire in the sky legend. The electric universe says, no, everything is connected in more ways than are understood at present, and one of them is via these Birkeland filaments, as they're known to plasma physicists. And they're these plasma filaments that you see in a plasma ball, only in deep space, because of the huge volume of space, those filaments expand and they stop glowing so that you can't see them. But radio astronomers can detect them by their influence on radio signals. So they're out there, and the Sun is tangled up in one of them, and that's what helps it shine, because the stars act like a focus for an electric discharge.
So would that be like the Sun is like the electrical outlet?
The Sun is like a circuit element, like a street light in the galaxy. You know, it's there, it's shining, but it's shining because it's connected to the current flowing in along the spiral arms to the center of the galaxy. And this is all peer-reviewed material from the plasma cosmologists, and which includes Nobel Prize winners and so on. So it's not me just making up these stories. As I said, as a boundary writer of science, I looked for the people who were making the real, doing real science and not just making up stories.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's more like the stars.
Cosmologists.
Sorry. So it's more like the stars are all the light bulbs in the house, and the center of the galaxy is like the breaker box in the basement.
Yeah, the center of the galaxy is an interesting place electrically. You don't need black holes, by the way. They're a figment. But yes, your electric light, you don't have to keep feeding it with fuel. It just lights up because it's in part of a circuit, and it's accepting energy from a very distant source, from an intergalactic source, which then spirals in along the spiral arms. And you can tell that by the magnetic field wrapped around the arms that there's a current flowing along. And it flows into the center of the galaxy, where it forms what's known as a dense plasma focus. It's something that's known in the laboratories of plasma physicists. It's a very simple device where you have electric current flowing in from one cylinder to a central, smaller or lesser diameter cylinder. And you start the discharge, and the discharge, due to electromagnetic forces, moves down the two cylinders until it opens out into empty space. And at that point, it balloons out and then folds back in and forms a tiny little donut of electromagnetic energy. and it's twisted and just forms this little donut. And that's, of course, what has been discovered at the centres of our galaxy and so on, and other galaxies, is this kind of donut. Now, the donut, when it gets to a certain density, has particles beginning to collide, and the most dense part is down the central axis, and that's where the jets come from. Because what happens is you get positive and negative charges, protons and electrons, join together to become neutrons, and then they can escape, and they escape along those jets and then dissociate back into proton and electron and form hydrogen, which is the stuff from which new galaxies are born. Now, this is the sort of thing that Halton Arp discovered observationally and is explained by the plasma cosmologists. All of this is just standard electrical experimentation and engineering. So you could say that astrophysics is better handed over to the electrical engineers and plasma scientists than it is to the people who are running it at present.
So if that, go ahead, Nickie.
Well, I was just going to bring up the solar flares. We know those are massively destructive to our electrical systems. Is that is that string you were talking about where creative forces are, or just exactly what is that?
The solar flares and so on tend to be instances where there's a plasma, one of these toroidal plasma donut shapes that is formed around the sun. It's been imaged by the SOHO spacecraft, actually. Now, that is a storage ring, if you like. And when the energy in that gets to a certain level, it will discharge to the sun itself. And the solar flares are part of that discharge activity. And so are the sunspots. Sunspots are where an electrical discharge from this plasma toroid, punch through the photosphere and reveal the cooler planetary-style interior of the sun, because the sun itself, as a phenomenon, is merely a huge ball of lightning, and inside it is something like a giant Jupiter.
So do you,
Jupiter on fire.
Does this this theory of our solar system, then, I guess that would put a kibosh on stuff like the great year of 26,000 years, or the fact that civilization would have been around before 12 to 20,000 years ago, then, because it would have been completely different.
Yes.
So like Yuga cycles and all that, like everything sort of happened then more recent.
Yeah. Timekeeping only began when ancient man first began to see the sun, the present sun, the one we had before being a brown dwarf, and we were orbiting within its photosphere, which is quite possible, easy to do. If Jupiter was to light up its magnetosphere, its inner moons would all be orbiting within that glowing sphere.
So it'd just be bright all the time?
Yeah, bright all the time, no day or night. It wouldn't matter which way up you were or how you were spinning, you would get the same energy all over the body. And of course, on the Earth, we know that Carboniferous era forests, huge forests, and that were in the Antarctic and the Arctic, and that huge animals roamed at the time. This is because the electrical environment was so different that the Earth's gravity was only about a third of what it is now. So those huge birds the size of small aircraft and so on,
dinosaurs,
had no difficulty. And the dinosaurs, they couldn't get off the ground in present-day gravity. So all of this is evidence for the fact that the Earth's environment has changed drastically over the history of the Earth.
And what about art? Like, what about us then as a civilization, and how fast we evolved, right? Like, that's like, that could be the missing link as well. Like 12,000 years ago, Göbekli Tepe was made after this reconfiguration, right? And the sun, the energy from the sun and whatever else it does to us accelerated our evolution into like a more of a sentient
from
species.
Monkeys
like,
to people. We didn't need hair anymore.
Not monkeys. From or like Denisovian, from all those pre-ancestors, right?
Yeah, it's a bit like Isaac Asimov's story, Nightfall, where this planet had multiple suns, and there was only one brief interval in thousands of years when all of the suns set, and then nightfall came about, and people went crazy because they saw the universe for the first time, all the stars and the galaxies and stuff. And it must have been like that for us when we were exposed from inside this glowing cocoon where life is most likely to be found in the universe. And we were suddenly exposed to the more hostile environment outside. And we saw the universe for the first time. It must have been quite a mind-bending, and you can imagine that it would have changed us in ways that were profound.
Is it possible that, would there have been room for the Earth to somehow change size in that process? Like, is it? It just seems like those continents fit together so good. And maybe that's just empty space in the middle.
Well, the problem with the expanding Earth theory is that there is really no mechanism that can do it. You know, even if you were to heat the Earth till it was incandescent, it would only expand a tiny amount. Nothing like that required to shift the continents apart. And as I said, the most powerful sculpting force in the universe for planetary surfaces is the cosmic thunderbolt. And that comes in various sizes, of course, depending on the body that happens to be shooting at you. And so I'm firmly of the opinion that the Earth's surface has been sculpted possibly during its birth or its attempt to escape from an electrical environment that was quite hostile. This is the thing, we don't know, we can't tell how old the sun is or the planets. We don't know their histories. The best we can do is to look at what the ancients told us and try and identify the members of the family that we had before we entered the solar system. And I've already traced similarities between Venus and Titan and Saturn, Titan being the biggest moon in the solar system and a moon of Saturn. And I can understand, in fact, I was the only one on Earth who predicted that when that Giotto lander would pierce the clouds of Titan and see the surface, that they would see a surface like that on Mars or the Earth. In other words, it has suffered electrical scarring as well. And that was proven correct. And I also said that there wouldn't be oceans of methane to account for the methane that's being lost today, because Titan isn't 4.5 billion years old. Its age is unknown, and it's only been in its present orbit for maybe less than 20,000 years.
What? So right now, are there like those moons on Jupiter? It's not bright all the time, though. Not now, like that, because it's in the sun's heliosphere. It's all fucked with.
Oh, that's right. Yes. The response of a body like Jupiter or Saturn outside the sun's influence would be to accept the energy that's coursing through the spiral arm that we occupy.
From the black hole at the center, from the not black hole at the center of the
from
galaxy.
The not black hole, yeah, from the intergalactic Birkeland currents. The evidence for that is growing too over the years. They found that even galaxies tend to line up like Catherine wheels on a wire. Simply because they are connected by a wire. Where were we going with that?
The Jupiter, the center of Jupiter. Or no, Saturn.
Jupiter lighting up.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, Jupiter lighting up. Yeah, it's almost a Space Odyssey 2010 scenario. Given a different environment, electrical environment, the gas giants would all light up as brown dwarfs to some degree. And that means that they would appear much larger, but they would glow dimly, either in infrared or red light, And that was the memory of the ancients, by the way, the legends of the purple dawn of creation, because that was their memory of what light was like. It was dim. It was aimed at the red end of the spectrum, although there was violet and ultraviolet due to the electrical activity in the ionosphere. And all of this just makes sense. Even it's been found, somebody was looking at the size of the eye sockets on dinosaurs, and they said they're huge. In other words, they needed big eyes to collect the dim light and be able to function in that kind of environment.
Nikki, you had a question about that, eh?
In the time when they existed, and was there maybe vapor canopy, something like that shows proof of the massive flooding we see around, pretty much a global flood at one time?
Certainly. One of the reasons why I say that being a satellite of a brown dwarf and orbiting inside that red photosphere is the place for life is because in the observations of brown dwarfs, it's been found that carbon molecules, water molecules, all the things that you need for life are found in the spectrum of those stars. So as you suggested, and as it was reported, water used to mist down out of the sky continually. It didn't rain, it just misted. However, when Saturn encountered the sun electrically, Saturn flared up. It became a comet, a giant comet. And its only way of achieving stability under this condition was to eject material. And it ejected a colossal amount. Most of it became the planet Venus. And the ancients witnessed the birth of the planet Venus. It's funny, when you think about the stories we're told about the solar system, and this information has been around since prehistory. But we haven't recognised it because we wouldn't allow it. It was beyond our imagination.
Isn't there one that's missing too? Wasn't there another one? The one Stitchin used to talk about. Oh, yeah. Well, what Sitchin has done is just to take those stories and make up his own story without any scientific background. What Eduardo Cardona did was to thoroughly document everything he said, which means that you can check it out and you can either agree or disagree. But Sitchin just makes up a story, which is obviously very attractive, and it has, because it intersects with a lot of information which is not generally understood at present. It makes a good story. However, it makes a much better story when you understand what was really happening. This idea of Nibiru and so on is a kind of a way of a rehash, if you like, of instabilities in the solar system. But since, as I said, you can only go back 12 or 20,000 years before everything was different, then any talk of Nibiru or some other planet coming in from great distances over long periods of time is wrong. There's a great tendency, actually, to try and find periodicities where there are none, because it makes your science look really, really good. Yeah, I was. Sorry. I was thinking more along the lines of there was like an extra planet was in the mythology, like Tiamat or something like that. No, not Nibiru. Yes. It was another inner solar system one that was destroyed in some cataclysm. Yeah. Yes. Most of those stories are built on material that we've used as evidence, but we've interpreted it more scientifically. Oh. And I'm quite convinced that the work that's been done by the mytho-historians in our group can be supported scientifically. If there were another brown dwarf or another large object to enter the sun's electrical environment, you would certainly know about it, because it would light up as another mother of all comets at great distances, at least 200 thereabouts times further away from the sun than the Earth is. So
there'll be plenty of warning if there is another object coming in. And of course, this is always a possibility given that there are so many of these dark objects floating around out there.
What would that look like if that distance, when it first lit up, would it be like the equivalent of like, what would you, like just a really bright star? Or it's too close for
it's
that?
It's what's called a nova outburst. And these are observed throughout the galaxy and other parts of other galaxies. Nova outburst is where either a very faint star, which was not noticed before, suddenly increases many magnitudes in brightness, or a star that's already there changes its position on the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram suddenly. All of these are electrical outbursts. And so, as I said, if another body came towards the sun and entered its electrical environment, the first indication would be a flare-up. So that would be plenty of warning that we're in for an interesting time.
Because the sun itself would do weird stuff.
The sun itself probably would, it's difficult to say. It would depend on the difference between the two bodies. If it was another bright star, then all bets are off. But if it was another one like Jupiter or Saturn, then I expect there would be effects on the sun, but they'd be more subtle. It's the incoming object that would suffer the most.
What? Shoot.
Nickie had a question about speaking about the ancient myths and all that, didn't you, Nickie, about Buxton?
Oh, yeah. The Bach saga. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they speak of the creation of the earth as being emitted from the sun. And they also speak of a cocoon or womb that, it basically plasma that it spit it out in. And so that's, the earth was protected kind of, I forget all the terminology, but I didn't know if you were familiar with that, or it sounds a lot like what you talk about, though.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you find is that the language that the ancients used has been misinterpreted. Mm-hmm. And when they spoke of the earth originally and the creation of the earth, they weren't talking about the planet we're standing on. They were talking about the phantasmagoria seen in the sky. Because it was changing all the time. Material was being spat out, and then it would go into orbit about the main body, and then there'd be electric discharges which changed the look of the thing, so that 1 minute it'd be beautifully symmetrical, and the next it'd look like Medusa's hair streaming out, and all this kind of thing. So the word earth was actually originally referring to what was seen in the sky. The same thing about, the waters under the earth and the waters above the earth. That was the appearance of the plasma, which looked like flowing liquid times. And so this is it. Most of those old stories have been misinterpreted simply because we have no longer got any idea what the heck those people were referring to, because we have no experience of anything like it today.
Okay.
Is it more likely that we were cruising around, rotating around Saturn, and we encountered this solar system, or is the sun the newcomer?
Oh, well, it's all the point of view, I suppose. We were quite happy, it seems, in Saturn's cosmic womb. The only thing is about being a satellite of a brown dwarf is that they don't have the ability to adjust their output. They don't have any feedback mechanism like bright stars, like the sun does. The photosphere actually has a transistor action, which steadies the heat and light output, even though the electrical energy is changing. You can tell that because seen in X-rays, our sun is a variable star, but it's not variable in heat and light, luckily. Now, with Saturn, with brown dwarfs, they don't have a bright photosphere, so they're not able to control their discharge the same way. What happens is that envelope expands and contracts. And sometimes when it contracts, the electric field becomes great enough that it starts stripping material like that, just as a comet does, starts stripping material off the central body. And that means that at various times you can have matter, soil, sand, gas, water, all that sort of stuff dumped on you in large quantities. And of course, when you look at every body that's been examined close up in the solar system, including asteroids and comets, they appear to be layered. And this would explain that they were originally all parts of planets which were in that kind of environment. They were built up by layering.
When's the next layer
Were the
coming?
rings left from that? The rings of Saturn, is that the left from that?
That's right, yes. It's the leftover. And, of course, that's water ice, which tells you that's where we got all the water in our oceans. We got it from Saturn.
Okay.
So I've got a couple...
That's a big puzzle, by the way. I should say that is a huge puzzle. And, in fact, the Juno mission that's just out there at present orbiting Jupiter, one of its main aims is to try and find out what Jupiter's made out of, to try and understand where we got our water from. Well, the answer's already available. You look to Saturn and we know its rings are icy. And also most of the moons, you'll notice, of the outer planets are icy too. So even Io, which looks like a pizza, was originally icy. It's just that the electric discharges travelling all over its surface convert the oxygen in the water to sulfur. So it's been dusted with sulfur.
Oh.
What are a couple? I got a couple big picture questions, like about the scientific community and your research. And before we wrap it up here, I wanted to just ask you a couple of those questions. Like, what's the biggest problem that they have with the EU theory? Like, what's the main thing that they say? Oh, well, it sounds good. I mean, we had a couple scientists over talking about all kinds of cosmology and all that, and I asked them about the electric universe theory, and they something like, there's some really good information there and there's great ideas, but it's lacking something, like, or it's missing this big piece. What do they say? And then I guess the other part of that is what is your best evidence for EU, like, as a summary?
The second part's a good one. I haven't actually thought about putting down a dot point list, and I'll probably think of some good ones after we've finished.
Oh yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
In relation to the first question, the problem is the way we're taught these days. The education system fails scientists because it trains the left hemisphere of the brain. And as a well-known scholar and psychiatrist, psychologist, classical scholar in England has pointed out from his research recently, the left hemisphere is the survival hemisphere. It's the one that holds the facts you need to survive or to be successful in your career, or it's the kind of roadmap for day-to-day survival. The right hemisphere, and he gave the instance of a chicken. He said the chicken uses the left hemisphere to find seeds and what it needs to eat in amongst the dirt and the grass and so on. The right hemisphere, meanwhile, is the one that's got the big picture, and it's making sure the chicken isn't somebody else's lunch. They were his words. Now, he said, this is a very interesting thing to consider in terms of humans. He said, why is it that brains are divided into left and right hemispheres? He said, it's been found that the connection, the corpus callosum between them, is actually an inhibitory mechanism. And I recommend this fellow's YouTube interviews. They're absolutely amazing. His name is Ian McGilchrist. And he points out that the problem with the way kids and students at university are taught is that you're given all of these facts, which are then absorbed by the left hemisphere as being necessary for your career and survival and all this kind of thing. And there's no challenging with alternatives. so that you can go away and use the right hemisphere with the big picture and try and figure out, well, which one's the best. And I guarantee if you were to start doing that in schools, you would find that kids would be turned back on to science because it is a real interesting challenge. You know, give kids the arguments for and against Einstein when his theory was first proposed and let them choose which they think is best. And I think you might find that a lot of these decisions that were made in the past were made on the basis of politics, show business, and consensus, which, as I said before, has got nothing to do with science. So that's the problem. So you've got people who consider themselves as experts in a subject, but they've been taught in this way so that the first response to any challenging idea is denial. Yeah. We all know about denial.
And then anger.
We see a lot of it. Yeah, and anger.
So is your work? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
I talk to somebody who I know who's an expert in a subject, and I can see after I say some challenging thing that he's not listening to me anymore. He's thinking up reasons why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to assimilate that thought and go away and consider it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, there's a psychologist here in Australia, in South Australia, who has introduced a remedial mediation system in schools which tries to help people overcome bad habits. Now, one of the bad habits of teaching is teaching people facts which aren't facts. They're opinions or consensus. And he said it's damn difficult. You have to keep presenting them with the contrast between the way they're doing something now and an alternative. You'd keep doing it until finally the person starts to think about the way they are thinking, and then you have the breakthrough, but it's hard work. So this is the problem I've got to deal with. It's much easier for me to talk to people like you who are open to these ideas. You haven't been trained to the point where the right hemisphere has been shut down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about if your work is in schools at all, because I did notice a teacher or at least one teacher in your forums discussing it, and it seemed like
yes, yes. He it's a bit of a problem though because of the strict curricula and that they put out now. If you want to do the electric universe, it has to be an extracurricular subject, or something that the kids just come along to voluntarily. And he attempted that, but there's always those who will try and pull the rug from under. But he said his response from the children was when presented with the Big Bang Theory and then the electric universe theory. The kids said about the Big Bang Theory, and smart people think that, in other words, they can see that it didn't make any sense. But the problem is the education system is such that you're plied with facts, you memorize them, as long as you tick the right box in the exam, then you're an expert. And you're rewarded. But that is not the way to develop scientists.
So you must have seen a bit of a shift, though, in the last, say, 5 or 10 years. You've got conferences now every year, probably with this thing since 2012, and
yes.
with the internet and with websites like yourselves and a bunch of other popular websites that are talking about science and spirituality and where they kind of meet. You seeing a shift at all?
Yes. Oh, yes. The very fact that we're having annual conferences and we're live streaming on the internet those conferences, and that we have funding for an experiment to test the electrical model of stars, all of these things show that there are people, scientists, who are looking for better answers and are prepared to stick their neck out and join us, or to be in the background assisting us. And this is the way it works, I think. You find those who are dissatisfied with the things they've been taught, and they actually are ripe or open to an alternative idea. And this is what's happening.
Is life more or less likely in an electric universe?
Oh, life is an essential part. There's no point to it otherwise.
You mean intelligent life, Darren, like ETs, or
just life in general?
Well, consciousness.
Part two, I guess,
and everything.
Would be if it alludes to any sort of possibility for how it's created.
When it comes down to creation, the big mysteries still exist, and it's good to be able to say this is a real mystery and not one that comes out of the fact that we've got the wrong model in the first place. And the mysteries of how matter is created still exist because, as I said, if you give structure within structure, how far down do these structures go? And what ultimately is at the bottom, or is there a bottom? So this is where the natural philosophers come in, and that's where they should be working today, but they've all been tossed out.
Does the universe behave kind of the way we would expect if it was on a hard drive? Or if it was digital? Or
No, we've got to be very careful with our mechanical models because they get us into all sorts of trouble. The brain is not like a computer. The human body is not a biochemistry set. There is more to life than meets the eye, and the electric universe provides some ideas about what those things might be. In fact, my work coincides quite strongly with the work of Rupert Sheldrake, the Oxford biologist, who has proposed things like the morphic field in embryogenesis and the fact that consciousness exists outside that grey porridge in our head. And all of these ideas resonate with the electric universe because that's the heart of the electric universe is the instantaneous electric force and resonance between similar structures, electrical structures. And when you think about it, to control the trillions of biochemical reactions that are taking place in a living creature at any instant, if you had to rely on nerve signals and hormones in the blood and all this kind of stuff, it just wouldn't work. It would be incoherent. And that's what the universe, the electric universe is about, is coherence, resonance, and holding information and transferring information. It's like we are the self-referential part of the universe. We witness it, the universe learns through us, and what we learn is out there, it's available. It can be used anywhere in the galaxy.
Yeah, we're all connected.
Are there any nations that are rogue nations or that are anywhere near closer, like Russia or China, or any of these people close to that model, or are they just following in our footsteps?
I don't know. Based on the things that I see, there's a lot of people tinkering around at the edges, but none of them have gone as far as the electric universe. I think the electric universe is so far out there that it's going to take some catching up.
This experiment, when is this happening?
It's in phase 2. Phase 1 was successful and looks very promising. And phase 2 is a much bigger installation and higher energies, and that is being commissioned this year. I saw the first firings in June.
What are the implications? Like, how far are you guys from having an experiment that can, like, how far are we from really rocking the boat?
Well, I think this one will rock the boat. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And that could be
this is the thing. This is the best way of being heard, is actually to show the person who says it's impossible, showing it actually working.
Yeah. Nickie,
is there any problem that you guys could accidentally create another sun? And
No.
Okay.
I think we know what we're doing, which is more than can be said for the initial nuclear experiments.
Yeah. Nickie, do you have any last questions? Quick questions before we go?
Well, it's just fascinated about the part there of maybe consciousness traveling, using an electrical grid or some type, and maybe we surf it at times, but, some people are better at it than others. I think I've touched that area in a time or two, but I don't really know how to access it. If
Yes.
you understand that.
Yeah, it does. The EU does impinge on ESP experiments and so on, and it shows why you cannot use a Faraday shield to prevent ESP, because it's the same kind of signaling that planets use to orbit stars. It's instantaneous and it's not shieldable. And when you think about it, that's how the universe has to work. It's no good if you can shield information from a part of the universe. It doesn't make any sense. So it's very exciting. There's almost no subject that you can't ask questions and get some sort of response from the electric universe model.
Yeah, everything is electric. Great. Yeah. So what do you got?
So gravitational waves are actually like electrical surges?
No, they're not gravitational waves. Those huge vacuum chambers, the biggest vacuum chambers on Earth, those arms of the so-called gravity wave telescopes, the thing they don't recognize is that they're full of neutrinos. You can't keep neutrinos out, and that's the ether. So all you need is a disturbance in the ether to pass by those two arms, and you'll get a disturbance, which will be misinterpreted. Certainly, black holes don't exist, so it's nothing to do with the coalescing of two black holes. The problem is all of these experiments are down in the noise, and that is what Irving Langmuir pronounced as pathological science, where you're scrabbling around in the noise looking for data to
fit
match
the
your
paradigm.
model.
Yeah.
In other words, the theory tells you what's right rather than the experiment.
I think the best part of that was when I think I even found somewhere where I could listen to the sound of the two black holes colliding.
Yeah. Well, this is virtual reality.
Yeah.
Now Tesla, he believed in the ether, or he had tapped into it, or that's why he was so far ahead of his time. Is that right? Or
yes, and he said the Big Bang was rubbish. So I class rather like Velikovsky as one of these intuitive geniuses who was able to see more clearly than anyone around them, without necessarily being able to fill in all the blank spaces, but certainly they seem to intuitively understand, in Velikovsky's case, what mankind was trying to tell us. In Tesla's case, what electricity is and how it works.
Wow. So what do you got coming up, Wal, for conferences and stuff like that? I'm going to put all of these links to the stuff we talked about in the show notes for the episode. And I don't want to keep you here too much longer. You've already stayed longer than we asked you to. We really appreciate it. We don't want to let you go, but we should get a chance to just hear what you guys have coming up besides that experiment there in the future. If there's conferences or stuff you want people to know about.
Our conference for next year is already scheduled for August in Phoenix. And all of the information about upcoming events can be found on the homepage of thunderbolts.info. I have a 2-day show to put on in South Australia in Adelaide next month on the 14th, I think it is, of... no, not next month.
October?
In October, rather. On the 14th and 15th, I think it is, of October. I'll be in Toronto looking at the experiment just before that. But I don't have any public appearances. But once again, I do space news regularly on the thunderbolts.info website, and that is the best place for people who want to get involved or learn more.
The experiment's in Toronto?
Yes.
Can we go watch it?
How fitting! It's the center of the universe.
Unfortunately, not yet, because of the nature of the experiment and so on. Until we have hard data, it's not a good idea to. But when I say that, all you have to do is have a look on thunderbolts.info and look for the SAFIRE experiment. That's SAFIRE.
Oh, yeah, I saw
And
that.
there are some YouTube videos there which show you the kinds of things that are happening. But as for seeing the setup and so on, I don't think that's possible at this stage.
What was the name of that thing that showed Earth as being the center of the universe?
Geocentrism?
Yeah, but that scan.
Oh, the cosmic microwave background. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an assumption that it's background. When you're surrounded by those plasma filaments all radiating energy, electromagnetic energy, then to say that the CMB is background radiation is purely an assumption. It's more likely that it's just the local environment that's we're picking up.
Huh.
So it's basically meaningless.
It just makes too much sense.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
it's hard to argue that.
The Big Bang never happened. It's nonsense. It doesn't even make any sense in physics. It's the ultimate free lunch, and you just can't do that and call it science. So whatever that radiation is has nothing to do with the beginning of the universe. Even the idea that we could make pronouncements about it when we've only got to this point in our science in the last sort of microsecond of our existence shows some degree of insanity on the part of the people involved.
No doubt.
You must take evolution along with it, as it's a total package. So, yeah, there's no varying from it.
Yeah, Darwin never explained the changes between animals, but when you realise that we respond to our environment at the genetic level, this is known as epigenetics. When that environment changes drastically, the epigenetics can change us drastically too. So the wipeouts in the past that are in the geological record were followed by an outburst of new animals that hadn't been seen before. And the reason is that the universe knows how to build creatures to fill the niches available. The information is out there, and life works that way. It doesn't have to be created from scratch.
So would it be like instant, or would it be like a generational mutation?
I don't know the details, but it has to operate almost, the offspring have to be able to survive in the new environment, if you like.
And you have to
it gives you some idea
offspring.
that it's rapid, it's sudden. Mm.
Huh.
Oh, this is fascinating.
And we're the best they could come up with.
Well, you've got to remember we've been traumatized terribly, and we all need to lie back on the couch and spill our guts.
Do you think life would have been better around Saturn? Like, were we intelligent and everything then?
It was remembered. It was remembered by all peoples as the golden age. Yes, because you didn't have to harvest, or you didn't have to work. Let's put it that way. Everything grew like crazy because red light is the fundamental requirement for photosynthesis. And you had water misting down. That's why a lot of the ferns and that, which are plants that like misted environment rather than heavy rain. And apparently whatever you needed to eat was just available.
Yeah, that's the beginning of Genesis, right? Garden of Eden. It was all there.
Yeah, the Genesis story is not about the creation of the universe. It's about the creation of the environment we now find ourselves in from something quite different.
Huh.
And what's the crazy part is 6,000 years they actually got it closer probably than the scientists.
That's a funny way of putting it, yes.
Right on, Wal. Well, we don't want to keep you on here too long. You've been great just to stick around with us here and chat.
It's good fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and we'll put everything in the show notes there and send you a copy, and keep up that awesome website for everybody. It is full of great information. lots of science, lots of scientists participating, and I think you guys are really heading for some good stuff.
Yes, I think so.
Hey, maybe you can come back after the experiment
Yeah.
and let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'll be happy to do that if it turns out the way I expect.
Absolutely. We're Canadian, so
Yeah,
we'll get the word out there.
Yeah, we're in Calgary, so.
Actually, we do have
I
a lot
see.
of listeners in Australia, so hopefully they'll head out and check out your thing in October.
Yeah, yes, in Adelaide. Yeah, it's that group called Astro SA. That's for South Australia. So if they look up Astro SA on the web, they'll find them. I think they're just about to put up the announcement.
Nice. Right on. All right. Good luck with the experiment. Don't blow up Toronto.
It's okay if you blow up Toronto. Just try and keep it localized.
I'll
Okay.
do that.
Thanks a lot, Will. Well, take care. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was our episode with Wal Thornhill.
That was a good one.
That was great.
I was hoping it was going to tie into the growing Earth theory again.
And I could see you really pushing for that.
Yeah, maybe that's one they got wrong. Probably not. It seems pretty solid.
You still there, Nickie?
Yes.
Oh, you did pull it off.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, along with Darren, they do fit together very well. If you,
I know.
if you look at a map,
Well, I was going to ask him about pair production. Like maybe that's like, you know how he just talked about it
was
as
sick of
well
it.
about the, what's that? Yeah.
He didn't want to go back to the growing Earth again,
No.
I don't think.
No, but I mean, talking about how matter's created though, right?
Oh, it's got to be created somehow.
Yeah. It just makes more sense to me. Everything's electric, right? Really, everything has a charge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, when I was looking at the Thunderbolts website there, he compared our solar system to the way electrons, protons rotate around a nucleus. So, you almost thought of the expanding universe and the infinite smaller side too, the old Animal House professor thing that he talked about. We got an entire universe inside of us too that keeps going the other way. So that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was good.
That was a fun one. That was a gooder. Long one.
Yeah, thanks for.
I could have went another hour.
Yeah, I know you didn't want to let him go there. I felt bad for the guy.
That's just the middle of the day over there.
I think he was just getting warmed up though. He can talk.
Yeah.
Well,
A lot of information.
Hopefully the experiment goes well.
Yeah.
I'd like to see physics turned on its head in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be good, eh? If the whole paradigm shifted, if it just really fell apart.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
I want to see him admit they were wrong.
No, I don't know if that'll happen.
You won't live that long.
No, probably not.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming on, Wal.
I thought you still had him here for a second.
No.
Yeah, check out grimerica.ca/support for all the different ways you can help out the show. Sign up for a monthly. Do a one-time donation. Whatever suits your boots. Sign up for the newsletter, grimerica.ca/news. Get your swag, grimerica.ca/swag.
Yeah, definitely donate. I'm a living example of how it can pay off,
Yeah.
That's how the karma works. And
I get so much more out of it. Like just tonight, all the information. Take me years to digest all that.
And of course, spam gram. Ram. Thanks for listening, guys. And we will see you next week.
I want a good score for my synchronicity. If Graham reads it out, then Darren might give it to me. Hey, don't you please read it low, yeah, yeah.